Chapter 11. York, Yarns, and a Yank with a Secret. The train pulled into York with a wheeze and a jolt, as if it too was exhausted by intrigue. Fog hung over the platform like a curtain waiting to rise. "Very theatrical," Edwina noted, descending the steps in boots entirely unsuited for cobblestones. Waiting for them was Mr. Rigsby, a tall man with a beard that had aspirations of wizardry. He wore tweed, smelled faintly of peppermint creams, and was nervously juggling a box labeled "Confidential" and a thermos of tomato soup. "Are you the woman with the horse murder scandal?" he asked. "Not quite," Edwina replied, "but close." Rigsby led them through twisting streets to a cluttered study above a bakery. "Everything changed when the letters started. They were unsigned but postmarked from a hamlet outside Leeds. Claimed an American heir to the Ascot fortune had been overlooked. A sailor turned tycoon. And now his grandson is here," Tabitha guessed. Rigsby opened the box. Inside were letters, photographs, and a locket containing a striking miniature. A young man who bore a resemblance to Claude Bellamy. "He calls himself Frank Bell," Rigsby said. "He's been asking questions. About the Duke. About you." "Is he here now?" Lewis asked. Rigsby nodded. "In town. Says he's heading to Ascot to claim what's his." Sebastian looked pale. "If he's another Bellamy, we could be in deeper trouble." "Or," Edwina said, lifting a letter to the light, "we could have another ally." They tracked Frank Bell to a nearby inn called the Black Pudding and found him in the lounge, sipping tea like a man trying very hard not to sip whiskey. "Can I help you folks?" he said in a smooth Missouri drawl. Edwina sat across from him. "You've been writing letters, stirring questions, claiming heritage." Frank smiled. "Or maybe just chasing ghosts. My grandfather was Claude's half-brother. They wrote each other, then stopped. I'm here to find out why." Lewis raised an eyebrow. "Do you know what Claude was involved in?" "Not all of it," Frank said, "but enough to know somebody killed him, and I want the truth." Tabitha exchanged a glance with Edwina. "Then perhaps we work together." Frank leaned back. "I'm good at poker, and worse at diplomacy, but I got a head for puzzles, and a strong dislike for aristocrats who think they're above the law." "You'll fit in splendidly," Edwina said. And just like that, their group grew larger, and the mystery deeper. Outside, the fog rolled on. In York, the past wasn't buried. It had simply crossed the Atlantic for answers. Chapter 12. Carriages, Codes, and a Curious Disguise. They left York the next morning, their party now one Missourian stronger and several scones heavier. Frank Bell proved a quick study, especially where British etiquette met investigative loopholes. "Your hats are absurd, but your law books are brilliant," he remarked, scanning an 1872 statute on inheritance rights. Back aboard the train to Ascot, Tabitha noticed a man trailing them through the third-class carriage. He was small, balding, and wore a scarf that matched the Hawthorne livery. "That's not subtle," she whispered. Lewis moved to intercept him, only for the man to disappear between cars. "We've stirred the hive again," Edwina muttered, "and the bees wear cravats." At Ascot, they checked into the same inn used for the royal meeting. Frank insisted on tipping everyone with American dimes and confused the bellhop by offering to pay in molasses. That evening, a note appeared under Edwina's door. "Stop digging, or be buried with your findings." She placed it on the tea tray. Do add this to your growing collection of death threats, Potts.
Shall I alphabetize them, madam?
The next day, they attended a public lecture on equine bloodlines, disguised with false mustaches, Horatio's idea, and oversized bonnets, Tabitha's contribution. The speaker, a dour man named Dr. Stratfield, mentioned offhand a shipment of falsified horse pedigrees intercepted last month in Dover. Frank leaned over. What if that shipment wasn't destroyed? What if someone kept it as leverage? Tabitha scribbled furiously. A forgery ring. Not just for nobles. Horses, too. That would explain everything.
If horses could talk, Sebastian muttered, they'd be blackmailing us all.
That night, they broke into the offices of the Ascot Jockey Guild, guided by Amos's cousin Lottie, a stable girl with lock-picking fingers and a fondness for jam. I saw men sneaking crates last month, Lottie said. Smelled like varnish and vinegar. One had a fancy watch. Inside the dusty storeroom, they uncovered sealed ledgers and crates of documents labeled Equine Credentials, Private. Tabitha flipped open a ledger. These are payments. Names, bribes, Hawthorne, Plunkett, even a minor German prince.
And this, Frank said, pulling a folded blueprint from a crate, is the design for a racehorse tattooing tool used to fake lineage marks.
Lewis closed the crate.
We are not just dealing with scandal. This is organized fraud.
Edwina looked around at her unlikely team. Then we expose it. Thoroughly, eloquently, and possibly with cake. The door creaked. They froze. Wellington the cat entered, tail held high as if to say, You're not done yet. Chapter 13. Gatecrashers, Gambits, and Ginger Scones. The discovery in the Jockey Guild sent ripples through their party. But ripples were not enough. They needed waves, and the perfect occasion arrived sooner than expected. An invitation, gilded and suspiciously perfumed, arrived from Lady Constance Fitzmarrow, announcing her annual Gala of Gallops, a gathering of Ascot's most influential, including race owners, lords, duchesses, and a man simply listed as the Marquis of Who. We're not invited, Tabitha said, squinting at the envelope. Then we must attend, Edwina replied. The group divided their tasks. Tabitha and Frank forged entry credentials. Lottie and Amos acquired uniforms from the catering staff, and Lewis rehearsed the cover story. Something involving pastries, royal lineage, and a goat that never actually existed. The gala itself sparkled with chandeliers, string quartets, and suspiciously opulent centerpieces. Edwina swept in under the guise of Lady Ashthorne of Devon, with Horatio as her foreign cousin.
Spanish Swiss with a hint of Norwegian,
Lewis suggested. Frank passed as an American race investor, and Tabitha declared herself Lady Penelope's genealogical liaison. They split up to listen, flirt, and investigate. Lewis overheard two stablemasters speaking in hushed tones.
The German prince is furious the horse lost. Says he was guaranteed a win.
You think they're using the ink stamp again? Tabitha charmed her way into the archives wing, where she found a ledger showing unusual payment transfers, some leading to familiar names. Frank caught a woman in a green veil whispering in French to a man who quickly exited through the servants' corridor. Meanwhile, Edwina found herself cornered by Lady Plunkett. I know what you're doing? Plunkett hissed. You can't stop the wheel, darling, but you can be crushed beneath it. I prefer to redirect it entirely, Edwina replied sweetly, biting into a ginger scone. Plunkett flinched as Tabitha appeared beside her. Lovely party. Do you know it's technically treason to counterfeit royal breeding registries? Prove it, Plunkett said. That's the plan, Tabitha said, producing a napkin with a fingerprint in saddle wax. Outside, Frank and Lewis cornered the man in the servant corridor, the same Hawthorne-affiliated saboteur from the train. Tell us who's funding it, Lewis demanded. You think it's just nobles? It's the syndicates, gambling houses, shipping tycoons. They don't bet on horses, they bet on futures. Frank scowled. Well, you just ran into ours. The gala ended in a blaze of music and false niceties. As they regrouped under moonlight, Edwina declared, They know we're close, and now we know where to press. Tabitha held up a stolen card. Private syndicate meeting, Blackbridge Hall, midnight. Then that, Edwina said, slipping the card into her glove, is where the next hoofprint lands. Wellington the cat, having stowed away in the punch bowl carriage, blinked approvingly. The game wasn't over. It had merely shifted tracks. Chapter 14. Midnight, Misdirection, and the Map of Lies. Blackbridge Hall loomed in the fog like a guilty conscience. Expensive, imposing, and in need of more windows cleaned. It's the kind of place where secret societies meet to decide the price of marmalade, Frank whispered. Or horses, Lewis added, and who gets to race them? The team arrived just before midnight, dressed in the shadows of stable hands, surveyors, and clerks. Lottie led the way through a hedge gap known only to locals and foxes. Inside, under chandeliers dimmed for atmosphere, the syndicate gathered. Industrialists, foreign investors, disgraced nobility, and at least one viscount who was also a bookie. Tabitha and Frank took up position near the archives. Edwina and Horatio blended into the crowd. Lewis stationed himself by the door. Lady Plunkett arrived in crimson, her expression carved from ice. At the dais, a man in a silver mask addressed the group. We have been exposed. Maplewood stirred the dust, but we endure. Tonight we decide who protects the plan and who costs too much. A ledger was opened, names listed, votes taken by hand gestures. Someone was removed from the room. That, Edwina murmured, was not democracy. Meanwhile, Tabitha slipped into a side office and discovered a map, hand-drawn, coded, and stamped with racing crests. It outlined farms and estates used to house falsified horses. Next to one location, Thunder, original. She froze. Frank peered over her shoulder. They cloned Thunder's papers, used his name, his reputation. Lewis whispered over the comms wire they'd rigged via teacups and copper. They're moving crates toward a garage. I see ink barrels. Outside, Lottie and Amos blocked the back lane with a goat cart. This is a vegetable emergency, Amos declared to the driver. The man swore in Hungarian. Back inside, Edwina stepped forward as if to ask a question, then knocked over a wine decanter onto the map table. Oh dear, Butterfingers, she said as the room lurched. Lewis used the distraction to pocket documents. Plunkett hissed. I'll have you arrested. Try it, Edwina replied. but I imagine the crown frowns on syndicates. With a blast from a borrowed whistle and the cry of, "Fire in the cellar!" they made their escape. Back at their lodgings, the team spread out the stolen map. "This," Tabitha said, "is the blueprint of a scandal, a whole network, and Thunder wasn't the only horse." Sebastian circled a name. "Here, that's where Claude last travelled before his death." Frank leaned back. "Then that's our next stop." Wellington sneezed on the map, and then lay directly over it. "Very well," Edwina sighed. "We leave at dawn, provided Wellington permits it." And the chase galloped on. Chapter 15. Thunder Rains Twice. The morning after the Black Bridge escape dawned damp and dramatic. Edwina stood at the edge of the stables with a fresh map, tea in one hand and irritation in the other. "They copied Thunder," she muttered. "Copied him, as if one noble horse weren't enough to rattle the empire." The team prepared for travel. Their next destination, Crosley Hollow, a remote training estate circled on the coded map, where Claude Bellamy had reportedly last been seen, and where Thunder Original was scribbled in ink. Frank checked the saddlebag. Extra biscuits, rope, bribe money, and one mysterious apple. We're ready. "Don't eat the apple," Tabitha warned. "It could be symbolic." Lewis secured a pair of binoculars. "The hollow is protected. If they're hiding horses, they're hiding other things too." By afternoon, they arrived via a hired cart that smelled of ambition and onions. Crosley Hollow was a grim estate, too neat to be abandoned, too quiet to be honest. Wellington the cat leaped down and promptly disappeared. They split into pairs. Frank and Tabitha surveyed the outer barn, where they found a black stallion nearly identical to the Duke of Thunder. "It's uncanny," Frank whispered. "But look, his blaze is slightly off-center." Inside, Lewis and Edwina discovered boxes of labeled inks, hot iron tools, and ledgers cross-referencing names, stables, and altered papers. "This is their headquarters," Lewis said. "The engine room of the Deception." Tabitha opened one ledger. "Claude's name is here, right before it stops. No record of what happened next." They regrouped by the paddock. "They trained horses here under false names, then swapped their records before races," Sebastian explained. "It's a shell game." "And it made someone very rich," Edwina added, "and Claude very dead." Suddenly, a low whistle echoed across the field. Men appeared at the tree line, 5 of them. One held a whip, another a rifle. "You're trespassing," one barked. "We're investigating," Edwina replied, "and you're armed on crown property. Shall we compare sins?" The man with the rifle stepped forward. "You're Featherstone. They said you'd be trouble." Frank grinned. And they were right. A fight nearly broke out, until Lewis whistled. From behind, Wellington reappeared, leapt onto a barrel, and knocked it straight into the rifleman's legs. In the chaos, the team scattered. Tabitha and Sebastian locked the barn. Frank and Edwina secured the ledgers. Lewis ran interference, literally with a rake. Within minutes, the intruders retreated. One dropped a notebook. Inside, shipping schedules, names, and the phrase, "Final drop, Hastings, Friday." Edwina straightened. "Then we ride again." Wellington meowed triumphantly. The fake Thunder watched silently from the paddock, his gaze calm. But it was clear only one duke would reign in the end.